for SK to pick it up here. Trying to walk through the smoke, but it's just not going to happen. SK Gaming, second major championship in a row. They are your winners.
Despite Fnatic's best efforts, it goes the distance. It goes all 3 maps, and we have our champions, the best team in the world, Ninjas in Pajamas.
Red touching the bomb, are they going to peek? Holding it now, and there is it. It's just out of Flamey. It's not going to happen. Astralis have won the face at London Main. There's no time. He just has to watch that clock tick down. This is it. Na'Vi have taken the major.
Without any further ado, let's go on to the final quarterfinal. Team Liquid 2019. Team Liquid are taking on 2016 Luminosity, the Brazilians that came from, out of nowhere with players you didn't really know a lot about to go on to win that legendary, moment where they won in Columbus and dominate the scene for a little bit beyond before moving to SK Gaming. So I've got material about Americans as always. So let's start.
Build a career off of it these days.
Dude, stop giving me fucking material then. You know what I mean? We can stop anytime. But anyway, yeah, Team Liquid. Obviously, this for me, way more than Cloud9's win in Boston, which apparently it's sacrilege to call it a fluke. I think historically.
Don't even bring up that word.
Yeah.
Don't even bring up the F word.
Historically, it's hard to not frame it that way, but whatever. For me, this Team Liquid team is the high, again, I use that phrase again, the high watermark of American Counter-Strike. Everything they achieved, the roster in perfect harmony, a team that, again, was so dominant when it hit its stride. And if it hadn't have been for that fucking player break, who even knows, what happens. But to win a Grand Slam, there was someone in the YouTube comments on one of these videos going, I think Richard has finally lost his mind. He thinks a Grand Slam is a bigger achievement than a major. I said, I go back and forth on it, but I'm starting to come around. I think a Grand Slam might be a bigger achievement. So I'll just start there. Guys, is the Grand Slam a bigger achievement than a major?
Jesus. Do I put on my ESL hat now, or how we doing?
Here we go. You need to change your gamer name to just Shill with a 1 in it or something.
Do you want me to upset the Valve devs or Carmack? We gotta pick one here, right? So
I believe Duncan already has made up his mind on that one. No, you just pick whatever you want.
I don't know. I think that it may. This is the boring answer. I think it would just have to be contextualized by how competitive the time in which they win the Grand Slam is, right? Because
this was a LAN Grand Slam.
Yeah, for the Liquid one, that wasn't this one of the events where Astralis didn't attend a couple of them. Didn't that? Yes, which that sucks right there. Astralis aren't skipping a major. I give you the hot fucking tip, right? They're gonna skip a couple of these.
If you watch the last couple, you might say they do nowadays, but keep going.
They're skipping a lot of them.
What did they skip in that Grand Slam run? Sydney, I think it was. Was it Sydney they didn't go to?
They skipped a bunch. They didn't go to Dream Masters Dallas. Yeah, they didn't do a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Which has kind of left the door open for Liquid a little bit, right? But they still had to convert so to stay on the discussion here, for me, still it's a major, just because the best teams aren't skipping a major. I understand the way that Liquid did it, right? Is with the best team at the time not being there. The way that Na'Vi did it, they won it online with Pro League, right? They won it as well with 2020 Katowice counting. I think that the Astralis one is the one that matters the most out of all the Grand Slams. The other ones so far, I think, still maybe have a little bit left to be desired because of some of the caveats around it. So for me, still a major over a Grand Slam at the moment.
Duncan?
Here's the problem: it's actually all in the question. The question, in my opinion, is this: there's two versions and they have a different answer. It's either which one is greater, like for your career status, which one is harder. Because the problem I have is this: I think it's inarguably harder to win more tournaments than win one competition. Like, put it this way, which was harder, Team Liquid winning this Grand Slam or Gambit winning that one major? I would say winning this Grand Slam. Look how many lands you have to win, look how many series you have to win. The problem is, though, which is greater for your career? Yes, probably the major, because it is the de facto world championship of the game, recognised even by the game dev, and as Chad says, it's the only tournament where in theory nearly every player would attend if possible.
And it's probably the one thing, the two majors each year are probably the two most stable points of the year in terms of every single team is gearing to peak at the major.
Yes.
Other events you're making a roster change and you're like, oh, okay, maybe I am Chicago, we're not quite ready to win this event, where this event is kind of going to be testing the waters, we're looking for the one after that is when we'll start being competitive. So nobody's fucking around at the majors. That is the focal point. So I think the major is critically important. And also, I mean, even if you just think of the way that we've talked about some of these great players over the years in the context of their careers of not having a major and how important it is to kind of solidify a legacy and solidify greatness, you do need to have that major trophy to really be able to do that. I don't know if that's probably going to tilt Duncan off the face of the earth.
No. All right. So look, let's.
The other way, I don't care if you do have the major. Your boy Stewie can fuck off to Valorant forever, mate. I don't care. He'll never be the greatest NA player. Don't care what he did. Yeah, he watched someone win a major. Right?
Oh boy, Jake.
I would like the record to show that I did not say Stewie was the greatest North American player.
Listen, there was a period where he was definitely in the conversation.
People were trying to make the argument when he won the Grand Slam, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
I've always said about Stewie, I've never said he was the greatest, but I do think on some level he's probably the most important player to step into the North American scene. Like I think the scene kind of needed him as like a shot in the arm, and obviously that seems to be fading a little bit, but certainly he brought something to his teams that helped them all get over the hump and achieve something that no other NA team was able to accomplish.
So look, this is good actually, because it's topical and it's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I want to pick everyone's brains about how, for this brief period of time, a Team Liquid with, I'm going to say it, fractious elements within the roster, because we all know, we've all heard the stories about Elige, we've all heard the stories about Stewie, and we all know where everyone is now and how it's all panned out for them. How were they able to work together towards this period of excellence that they had, given that it couldn't possibly work now? It didn't even work after this, when Twists went on
for 64 days.
Yeah, exactly. When Twists went on and did Reflections with Duncan, he was very open, but it's a fantastic interview. Highly recommend people watch it. And he said, Stewie was the guy that essentially, drove Nitro away, and that he felt he couldn't continue in the team. And
he did just do that thing where he just said like an element within the team, but then it was like the only person it could have been was like Stewie 2K.
Yes,
so he sort of did it like the smart way, but like he basically.
So it's an element, not Nap.
It's not Nitro, really. But he wasn't just say
it can't be Nitro because he's the one who got drove away, and it can't be you, Twists, because you're saying it's an element.
I know exactly. You know what I mean? Some those phrasings,
Look, if you've played Cluedo as a kid.
Yes.
But anyway, so look, how did
on the smoothie
I have a
of
theory.
masking a person's identity, put that way.
Yeah, better than smoothie.
I have a theory, Richard. I think that because we all know what happened at the end of 2018 with Liquid, right? And at the end of 2018 is when Taco and Zeus made a Kirby level roster decision, decided they wanted to go back and try and form the Brazilian squad. But I believe that Taco...
Some might say one last dance,
Yeah, they're going to keep doing that.
They need to just be sent home. You've had one last... The last call was 5 minutes ago, mate. Fucking get his old Mrs. Brown, knock off home. You've had enough last calls. I'm calling it now.
Wait till this Coldzera Taco news is like official in a couple of days, right?
Christ.
So, please don't.
Yeah.
Can we stop this?
I know.
But I think that Taco and Zeus actually, because in 2018, right, the Liquid roster was still pretty good with Taco there, right? They obviously weren't the version they were in 2019, but they were still, a pretty good roster. And I think what Zeus and Taco brought to the team was probably staying on top of a lot of those personal, those issues between individuals, right? I think that hard work was done. Then you plug in Adren and you plug in Stewie, right? You get a firepower upgrade over Taco. You get someone a little bit more strategical than Zeus, and you have everything, all the hard work that Zeus and Taco did with the core and the rest of the team, which is the star trio of Elige, Naf, and Twist, with the in-game leader of Nitro, and the playstyle where they still weren't really having a primary AWPer. If anything, Stewie coming in meant they were more flexible in their AWPing role. So I think that this Grand Slam run for Liquid, and when they were so good in this early stage where Stewie joined, was because they were still sniffing Stiff and the High that Zeus and Taco had set that base of the team. And then with those two gone, everything just slowly disintegrated with the bullshit of the relationships and the egos and all the stuff of Stewie and Elige, which are clearly the two who eroded whatever the team had, right? The fact that Elige, Naf, and Twist are still not together as a star trio right now. Imagine those three motherfuckers with OC. Those three with OC and Nitro can still in-game lead. That's a sick team. The fact that that is still not a roster in North America is a bit of a travesty. It is fucked. And that's all because
that decision.
Yeah, well, look, that was for. I feel like that was kind of putting Twist out of his misery in a way there, Jason. You know, taking him out the best. Said, listen, mate, you've suffered enough. You fucking suffered enough, lad. You're young.
Yeah, I can. Well, I mean, I can answer that question too. I mean, I know when I was there as the coach and made that change at the end of the year, I mean, there was a lot of factors outside of just the team as well. Like with the whole COVID situation and travel to Europe, like Twist wanted to be in Europe pretty much full time. Rest of the team wanted to be split up. So even if you solve like the personality in-game issues, there was still plenty of factors drawing Twist to the European continent that I didn't think would ever kind of really coincide with the rest of the team, because obviously Stewie wanted to stay in the States, Elige wanted to be in the States as much as possible. Guys didn't want to be traveling for, you know, living over in Europe for the majority of the year. So there were still some other conflicts, but yeah. Surely. I mean,
go on, keep on.
Well, well, if you have a point on that, go ahead, because I was going to go back to the Grand Slam.
Basically, on his original point about like the elements in the team, I almost feel like the reason why this team worked, but only for a brief period of time, was because of the story of what happened in 2018. When 2018, what essentially is low-key elevated Team Liquid to the amazing position of the world, but made them second to Astralis every time, is they were like a mini Astralis. They tried to play like proper tactical Counter-Strike, like play like by the roles and by the like fucking play efficiently, use a utility, all the stuff that everyone in 2018 was trying to copy from Astralis. And you have to give them credit. They were the best at copying it from Astralis. Like they used it to beat everyone else. They used to routinely beat Na'Vi and Simple and FaZe Clan and all the SK Gaming, all these teams. The problem is they couldn't beat Astralis, who was always in the final, obviously. I get the vibe that if you were those players, like after that year, you're just like, right, I'll try anything else because I've tried that. I've done really my level best. I got in the strats, I got in the demos, I did all the tactics. He said, we tried every role, we tried squeezing as much fucking blood from this stone as we can, and we still didn't get any of the wins. They beat us every time it mattered. So I get the vibe that on the one hand, they're just like, right, we're ready for anything now. Then secondly, you bring in Stewie, who's just been on that nightmare MIBR project where, this is even why I think this is the element where people don't have a good enough memory. You know when everyone's always just like, I can't believe Stewie 2K was being so rude to Fallen. You mean one of the guys who just fucking punked this guy for a year and treat him like a little bitch, and then would just put him in shit support roles, then lose the game and just be sort of like, guess we should just get the old Brazilians back, the same ones you also scapegoated. Like, if I had to put up that for a few years, if a few years later you come to my team and you're just half shit, I think I might just roast the shit out of you.
People really have forgotten about the Tarek and Stewie. Yeah, totally. It's never talked about, and people don't realise. Like, listen, that was when I was very much a Stewie advocate in that sense. I think he's turned into an egomaniac now, unfortunately. But, you know, the reality is then, yeah, Fallen wasn't using, like, Tarek as well, by the way. I mean, still had, like, a lot to offer a team. People forget. I mean, like, I think he was statistically the best player in Boston. It wasn't like he was, you know, washed. Yeah, it wasn't like he was watched.
I've actually made this point at the time. I made the point that if you actually look, I actually think that's why another reason I think Fallen's a mega overrated IGL even. Those two players, Stewie 2K and Tarek, went on to also do role-playing roles in different teams in Team Liquid and EG, and they were amazing. They did an awesome job. They were the fucking glue of those roles. So anyway, the point I was making was this. So Stewie 2K has also just had a terrible year of his career in terms of like what he expects. He's in a bad spot even. If you don't even know the story, the most shocking part to me in that interview, I didn't even notice myself, was Team Liquid didn't even choose to pick him up. That was the org that did that. The players didn't say, right, Stewie's got to be the guy who replaces Taco. Apparently, the org just told him we're signing Stewie 2K. There we go. That's the guy coming in now. So anyway, basically, it's basically the reason why 2019 Team Liquid was good because it was the Suicide Squad scenario. You've got nowhere else to go and you're just thrown together. You have to just make the best of what you can. And so I thought it like reinvigorated Stewie 2K, could actually do his proper entry role and could even have like, it looked like some input into how the team calling goes, which he obviously wanted all his whole career. They needed an aggro player, so he was the perfect player to bring in that scenario, because I always thought the flaw of their star players is they have three of the most passive star players in the game. Remember, Twists was not the entry player he is now. He used to be a way more like, look, the joke is players they all wanted to lurk essentially. So I always thought having an aggro player helps. Like basically for that short period of time, I think it did solve a lot of problems. It's just I don't think long term those egos ever would all have like coincided. That's the problem. All those players at one point in time being the star player on a team, like it's just unlikely that lasts forever. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I was going to say just from my experience and from what I felt inside the team, I think the only reason they won that Grand Slam, and it's kind of a boring answer, is literally all 5 of those players just hit peak individual perform during that run. And that helps solve every issue because we all know from watching Team Liquid over the years, like this is how it goes. They're playing a game, maybe they're doing good, maybe they're doing bad. Someone makes a mistake, something happens, a heartbreak round, they lose like a 5-on-3, they lose a clutch they shouldn't have lost, whatever it might have been. Player A gets tilted, kind of, shuts down, just becomes a tough thing to deal with in the team. And because of that, player B then gets tilted because player A is off his fucking rocker. And then player C and is like, oh, well, player B's given up. This is fucking stupid. So then I'm out as well. And then you have players, D and E doing their best to stay level-headed and carry this like dead carcass of a team who are all quiet and unemotional and not really any focused any longer into it. I mean, the one thing that gets over all those issues is, yeah, we made a mistake, but then Homeboy's about to win a 1v4 in the next round and the mood is going to change immediately. And that mood change is something Team Liquid's never been able to do kind of on command or as a team when they're in the thick of it. It just kind of happens so magically. So if you go back and watch some of that, dude, some of the clutches they won at these tournaments throughout this are just impossible clutches to win. They would never be won again a second time in a round. And I think also another thing that helped, I think we mentioned this when we initially talked about this Liquid roster. Remember, this was the Krieg meta. This is when the Krieg had that super buff. So when you put that weapon in the hand with 100% first bullet accuracy or whatever the fuck it was, when you put that in Twist, when you put that in Alicia's hands, when you put that in Naf's hands, like that weapon is just unbelievably powerful to help you able to get those kills, and obviously the AUG on the CT sides as well. So I think that meta really helped them kind of propel things also. But really, I mean, as much of it as it might seem like a little bit of a scapegoat answer, just individually all 5 players hit their best form of their career during that run, and it just didn't stop.
Isn't there like 2 ways to look at this, right? Because like I think when we were talking before about them learning and copying Astralis right from 2018, and then just bringing that forward into 2019 and playing looser and having the individuals on point, they were just kind of maximizing that, right? Like you're doing everything as you should by the book, but you also have a little bit more confidence to make that play, or you will make that play when it comes your way. But then I question again when we go back to this, Astralis not rocking up to a bunch of events. Like you won them, you're in form, but you weren't beating the final boss. Like that's
only beat them once.
That's going to leave a bad, and that was at the start, right? In the iBuyPower event.
Also beat him at Pro League.
No, they beat him at Pro League in France.
Which was
like the quarterfinals or semifinals.
They did beat them at the start of the year, right? In iBuyPower.
They beat him at the iBuyPower. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, but regardless,
that was the first event with Stewie. Yep.
That wasn't the point anyway. The point was like obviously in the arenas, in the big LAN events and stuff where Astralis was doing their best work. But at the same time, if Astralis choose not to go, what are you meant to do? How can I hold that against Liquid? It wasn't their fault, but it just makes it a little bit more difficult not having them topple that, because that's what everybody was being compared to at the time. So that's the downside. Like it's obviously a very good team, right? And they were on a hot streak and they were riding that momentum and they were going from event to event to event when we were at peak events, right? This is back when everybody was fucking losing their mind from traveling every second weekend, and it wasn't like it is now where the North Americans do actually spend more than 50% of the year at home, right? This was back when the North Americans had a legitimate reason to complain about, people playing a video game and paid tens of thousands of dollars to complain about being overseas. You get my point though, right? Like this is back when it was nonstop. So I'm having a hard time like trying to work out where I want to put them. Like in one way, I want to kind of discredit them a little bit because of the Astralis shit. The other way, I want to be like, yeah, well, you guys were fucking sick. So I don't know. It's a hard one to place for me.
It's what I hate is that people act like the boss, the Berlin major gives us a conclusive answer and we've solved the question. There's no question to be asked. They wouldn't have beaten Astralis, Chad, because they didn't, and Astralis won, so Astralis was better the whole time. How does that work? So we're going to act like a player break doesn't change people's form. Like, you don't play the game. Literally, the reason why I think that is the most whack narrative, I'm not saying you said it, but it's a very famous one, where people are sort of like, yeah, but there was no Astralis, and because Astralis beat them at Berlin, it shows that if they had have been there, they'd have beaten them the whole time. Well, here's what I would say. It's a bit convenient that all the top teams in the world, including Australis, were way worse at that major. Remember, the top 4 teams in the world went in this order. Team Liquid, Vitality, ENCE, Australis, right? Every one of those teams sucked at that major. Australis got good at the end of the major. People forget in the group stage they lost to NRG, just straight up in a best of 3. Then they almost lost to that fucking crazy team. That's why Hunter and Nexus have got those gigs.
Mate,
Like,
just look at the top 4.
I know, exactly.
Just look at the top 4.
Hey.
That low key, by the way. I'm sorry about the Renegade thing, Chad.
Yeah.
I know where you're going, but right at the end of the day, that major is a fucking stinker.
That's wild.
That major is a stinker. But on the plus side, I think if Liquid had played, if Liquid had played anyone else in the quarterfinals.
Like, here's the difference, right? The team that actually came the closest in the playoffs to beating Australis was obviously the NRG team in the semi-finals, right? Here's my prediction. If NRG had actually won that game or won that major, everyone would go, who cares? It was a shit major. Look at the playoffs. Like, the joke is it's only Australis was allowed to win it and therefore get the credit because everyone low-key secretly thought they were number 1. Because here's the problem, Chad. The story didn't go the way you told it. As in, I'm not saying like you played it. Like, this is not how the community set it up. The community said the whole time Australis was better. Pimp said in Cologne Australis is better. Well, then why don't they win? Because here's what you cannot deny. Nobody goes to Cologne just to put in an appearance. You go to Cologne to win, mate. They were in that semi-final thinking they were going to beat Vitality and play Team Liquid in the final. Go look at the interviews. They're not saying, by the way, we're not number 1. Like, don't say that about us. They're all saying like the same vibe. Like, no, we secretly are. Like, this is our event. Like, they're all saying all that shit. The point is they didn't. So my issue is this: no one will ever know if actually Australis would have beaten Team Liquid then, because since this is pre-playable, like, we just don't know, unfortunately. As you say, Team Liquid could only beat who they played. I agree, though, for the sake of this competition, it hurts them, because by definition, playing against weaker competition is just not as good. The other teams on this list, they're the greatest teams of all time, so they obviously have some of the best competition, and they played everyone. So I agree, it definitely counts against them, whether you put in the context or not.
Sure. Well, so that was what I was going to say. Is there an argument to be made that this Team Liquid lineup is the most overrated on the list of all the great teams? Because obviously it was a 64-day period where they blasted through and essentially secured the Intel Extreme Masters. That's not a huge sample size. Getting that Grand Slam in the quickest time ever done. They didn't win a major. Not only did they not win a major, they didn't even make it to a final of a major. They were out 5th to 8th in the 2 majors they competed in 2019. And they on the backslide of 2019, they didn't really do a lot after that player break. After that,
what's funny. I would say their main competition, they're playing against them right now. It's the team with the 2 majors and fuck all else. I think it's these 2 teams are probably the most overrated on the list.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I think the reason that this Liquid roster does get a lot of shine is because who they were second to, right, throughout that period of time. That's obviously why they get a lot of shine to their name. Like, to be second over 2018 and 2019 when Australis is the best team in the world, that means a lot. Like, because we put Australis on the highest of pedestals, we said they're the greatest team of all time. Well, to be second to the greatest team of all time means you have to be up there, right? So in terms of like overrated, it's such a hard thing to say. When you look at the trophy cabinet, right, you can't fuck with the Grand Slam and the fact that they won those events. But yeah, you're right. They weren't in a major grand final. And I just said earlier that I would put a major over the Grand Slam.
See how I set it up, Chad?
Yeah, you fucked me here, haven't you, man?
You walked right into the trap.
I'll give you a counterpoint, right? So the premise goes, it's not as good because Australis weren't there for all of it, right? I'll flip it the other way. Take any year of Australis you want. Where are all their like 20 series in a row winning streaks? What would their problem be, Chad? They don't have to play Australis either. Should be easy, right? Even some eras, people said they were in weak eras. People were saying in 2018 because of FaZe with no Olaf and Na'Vi still hasn't changed. Everyone's like, it's a weak era. Well, where are all their streaks? Go on then. Show me the streak. Bring up them winning 4 events in a row and winning 20 series in a row and 30 out of the 4. They don't have, these don't exist. Like, that's the problem with this whole discussion is like, are we only going to judge your matches against the best? We're also surely throwing in your body of work. And like, they were incredibly dominant, the Team Liquid squad. I agree. They didn't peak out. They didn't cap out the whole career. anyway, which is the problem with this list.
I don't know if it's like overrated, but I think there's the problem for me is like it's just like it's the story of Team Liquid where like you can see the potential and like this shows like what the peak can be if you could ever actually make it sustainable. And it's one of those things where you're just like, what the fuck? You're telling me that there's just some stupid personal emotional beef that we can't get over to achieve this level more frequently? And I think that's what it is. I think it just kind of shows the disappointment of being like, wow, you guys probably not going to hit this peak for any consistent period, but you could be close to that peak for a longer period of time. And I hope, I honestly, I would think and I would hope that at one point when some of these guys grow up a little bit more and look back on this time, like this has got to be like frustrating if you're Stewie or Elige looking back 5 years from now, just being like, man, like the kinds of things that we kept ourselves away from, like the way that we had to play ourselves, like they were their biggest opponent. Like even when I was there coaching, it felt like you're going into a match, and I know from talking to some of the players, they felt this too. You're going into a match playing against whoever it might be, Astralis or Vitality, but you also very much feel like you're going into a match against like your teammates because you know at some point that tilt is right around the corner. So you're like fighting to make sure that tilt doesn't happen, and you're also fighting against your opposition, and that's just an impossible prospect for a team at this level. So for me, it's like overrated's not the right word, but just the fact that this body of work, or not, I mean, not just this series, but like May, June, July, that's it. That's all this team had in 2019. Outside of that, I think
it was a wonderful summer, Moses.
Yeah, it's always a fucking just a summer with the North American teams. But I think the problem is even when you look at the event list in the first half of the year, it's really padded with like second places at Blast Miami, Blast Sao Paulo, and those are like the Blast events. Remember that still had that like not as cool of a format as they have now. Obviously, first at Blast in Los Angeles, the first at Chicago, but then after that, it's just really nothing, not much.
Yeah. Oh, look, let's talk about their opponents. Obviously, going up against Luminosity. Now, we talked a lot about how, Fallen crafted this team and made the hard cuts, in previous episodes. So we won't go over the same ground. Let's instead talk about some of the other components of this team that we didn't talk about last time. And so obviously we didn't really talk a lot about Fur and his position as one of the, great riflers. For me, it's kind of interesting because I don't know how biased this thinking is, but the Fur I remember from this time period was just a fucking beast. Just so aggressive, in your face, real like, pushing on CT and just like killing, just doing what he wants to do, right? Like him and Cold Zero would just had this like brutal, like, style of play where I know Cold Zero was like the master of the trade kill, which gives everyone like the carte blanche to call him a beta as if that's indeed the same thing, which it isn't. But Fur for me was like the tip of the spear. This is the guy that goes and just gets his kills. He does what he wants on a map. And so I'm always mega frustrated with where his career ended up, from where he was to where he is now. And then you saw him on this like.
By the way, I actually think in line with what you're saying on the last episode, I think we even forgot him on the list of great entry players.
Yes, yeah, true. There you go.
We didn't have him. He wasn't the household name, was he? He should be on that list. I agree.
Yeah, and I know, but I feel in a way the fact that we forgot about Dre is because obviously he had like so many years where he's languished. Sure. I think about I think about the things he says on the stream. I think about like the almost insipid attitude he's had in some of the other lineups he's played in. But then
Troll retired that event in 2019. You remember that start? He was in China. Yeah. He just did a tweet where he was like, "I guess I'll retire" or something. So I even did a reply like, "Oh, great career and everything." He was just laughing like, "Lol." It's like, I just fake retire then. I guess we're just doing that then.
I mean, it's esports. It's all fake retirements. Probably even mine. Who knows? Like so. But anyway, so I mean, for me, I'm mega frustrated with where Fur ended up because you even saw in this last hurrah with Imperial recently.
Oh, he was the best player on that team by far.
Motherfucker could have been. He could have been. Yeah, he could have been one of the greats. Yeah. So, but in 2016, I want to ask you guys, where was Fur in terms of great riflers in the world for you?
Owning my noob team on a consistent basis. I don't know. This is just one of these players. I know when I talk about him, I lump him in with the categories of like a JW, which for a lot of people doesn't make much sense. Obviously, Fur's a rifler and JW is an AWPer, but in terms of the amount of space and the amount of chaos they're able to cause on the map, I think they did it a little bit differently. It might be easier for people today when they see Rain, for example, on CT side overpass, just having complete control of anywhere over towards the A side of things being an absolute nuisance. Fur was the same kind of guy. I was actually trying to think more recently about why he's able to perform good again now. And I think it's like he's had to become more complete of a player, because back then he was able to just do that part, right? He didn't need to do the other parts because, well, you had FNX and Taco doing the bitch work and the anchor work, and obviously Coldzera in that mix as well. So Fur was able to be a bit more one-dimensional back then, which is why he was probably so good at what he did, but also why eventually that came to a close and people started to figure it out. This is what happens to all these great space makers. Is I think for them it actually is very difficult to continue to reinvent the wheel of your aggressive maneuvers. How many options can you possibly have in the first 10 to 15 seconds of a round, right? You're going to run out of options pretty fucking quick. So I think Fur within that role back then, like that was what was so scary about this team is, yeah, sure, maybe you would deal with Fur and go 1-for-1, but then they had all that other depth. And then if you didn't deal with Fur, the round was fucking over right there anyway. So he was like the first wave that you had to get past, him and Fallen's AWP within this team. And I think only recently seeing him do it again is what I've been reminded of, just how good he was, because that's the thing. Coldzera gets all the shine, and then when Coldzera doesn't, not only is Fallen the in-game leader, the AWPer, he's a vocal captain and the guy who is like propping up the entire scene where he's from. So the shine, like Fur, if you've ever met Fur, right, and I know everybody here most likely, he's a pretty understated lad, right? Like he's not out there, you know. Yeah, like I'm sure he definitely, like the rest of them, you know, enjoys a bit of a drink and a party and stuff, but like he doesn't wear that kind of outgoing, crazy persona. Like Taco's a bit more outgoing, right? You see Taco, he's always saying, hey, you know, not the same kind of guy at all. So for Fur, I don't think like he brought the attention to him, right? His playstyle did all the talking. That's kind of the way that I felt about Fur.
Yeah, I would say this, like if someone's only a fan who watched modern day CS, Fur basically on CT side was art before art. He was just pushing every round. And even if you know he's going to do it, it's like it's still really hard to stop, because these guys, like Chad said, they've figured out every possible look they can give you in that wheelhouse. They're not doing it the same way every time. So like, and similarly, for the time period it works, when that works, it just works. Like the famous detail I'll give as to how mega Fur was at his peak was, everyone will remember the nightmare for Carrigan was playing SK on Overpass. Now people don't know the context. Carrigan pretty much invented the way Overpass was played. That was even one of his best maps in those teams. The joke is he couldn't win one of his best maps ever, and primarily because this guy, I know people always made about Fallen's Options, this guy's play on CT set, you couldn't stop it. It would just always get rounds, and the amount of time and pressure he could put on that A site was mental. Remember, that's the one where you have the slow build up and you can fuck with the CTs all day long. Like, am I there or am I not? Is the presence? Is this flash like the slow smoke where we're going to come on the site, or is it just a fake on the other one? You can't even do that when you play against him. And I always remember this detail from an interview because it shows you what a unique, idiosyncratic player he was. Right? When he did all this, you might naively think, right, what he must be doing is he must be the guy who studies every demo. He knows every spot of where the T's are going to be. You know, the joke is, he even said in an interview that he actually would say to people like Fallen, don't tell me where they are. That sort of fucks with my vibe a little bit. Like, what the fuck? That's like those stories back in the day where Shox was going out and getting pissed drunk and carrying the next day. Look, I obviously don't recommend it, but fuck, if it works for you, mate, tip your hat. Works for you, just have at it. Because what I would say is quite cool about this year of the team for me is this wasn't like peak Fur. The crazy thing is, this was it. His transition, I actually think, allowed this entire period of Brazilian dominance to occur. Because the year before, when they didn't have Coldzera, he was it. It was just the Fur show. People forget this. Everyone who loves to tell me about how good Fallen was, go back and watch when Fallen was in that team before Coldzera. He wasn't even vaguely a top player in the world. He wasn't even an AWP, if people don't know. He was just a bang average rifler who's the IGL. All the credit came for the strats and like winning in post-plant scenarios and stuff. Like, at the time, Fur was the Brazilian player, and he was hard carrying most of the games when they were like the team that could barely make top 8 at the major. Then when you bring Coldzera and FNX in, players who have a very set way how they want to play the game. I always thought Fur was the guy who just sacrificed it all. He was like, don't have to make the team around me. You don't even have to give me all the space. You don't have to give me the setup. I'll just do whatever's left. In this case, just a sort of entry role. And then that's why I also thought the cool thing was the next year when they got rid of FNX, it's like he finally got to get his space back. Because the year after, the 2017, was unbelievable that year. I thought Fur was like one of the best aggressive years you'll ever see from a player in Counter-Strike ever. So I think mad props to him. Probably like Richard says, attitude wise. He's just the guy who actually also could sort of like give up a bit of the ego, because he's the guy as well where, like, I know there's all these weird things because of the things he said online and on streams. In real life, he's probably the most chill of all those players.
Yeah,
He's
it's
super
true.
chill guy.
It's true. He's definitely, like a lot of us, I guess, in esports. You know, it's weird to kind of like sometimes you get embroiled in like dramas that, like, I don't know, they blow up and it's just not like a reflection of who you are. And it's like, yeah, met for a bunch of times, had beers with all the Brazilian players, and you know that with maybe the exception of like coldzera, they're all pretty fucking laid back. Like, I mean, they're just a bunch of laid back, like, chill guys. Fur probably being the most, like, and so it was weird. I remember the Furia, you know, drama that happened. It was like he seemed very animated and aggressive in a way that's not like really a reflection of who he is. But on the server, like I say, I mean, yeah, it's crazy we missed him for the entry fragging, because like at Columbus, he was the 6th best overall. But I mean, some of the people above him only played 2 maps, like Bondic and NBK for opening kills. You know, Fur played 9 maps.
That's a name I haven't heard.
There you go. I told you it's fucking time travel land. Remember that motherfucker? But you know, funnily enough, Dupree was above him again with over 6 maps played, and so was Simple. So, you know, I mean, Fur was great at what he did, but no discussion around this team, because here you go. This is where I'm going to get mega controversial and start getting into the matchup area. No conversation about this team is complete without talking about the absolute, just brutal dominance of coldzera, particularly at Columbus, but all throughout this year. You know, remember, he was like the first player to go HLTV Player of the Year back to back. And 2016 coldzera is unplayable for me. You know, when I think about the best riflers I've ever seen, this is it for me. I think this narrative about him being like a beta and Taco enabling him and him getting all this, I think it's fucking whack. I hate
Here's
it.
the thing I think sucks the most about it. Basically, the premise goes like this, and this is where it fails utterly. The initial part, you can sort of like give the person, oh, okay, I'll follow you down this path. I'll see where you're going. The initial part goes like this. He had all the setup. He had Taco that he could bait. He had Fur that went first. He had Fallen giving him calls. Then after that, he's facing opponents that he knows where they are. He knows how many people there are, where they are on the map. They have less health. He only has to shoot against a guy with less health. Here's the problem with all that. That's all correct, potentially. Right, now insert your favourite player. Your favourite player might be Nico, Simple, whatever. Would they then win all these matches and tournaments and get all the same kills? Absolutely not. That's where it falls down, is they make it sound like, but he had all these advantages. Yeah, and with those advantages, he used them to the maximum you could possibly use them. Like, basically, he played almost perfect Counter-Strike. And that's not exaggeration. Yes, he had advantages over other people. I've seen people have those advantages and not win. I've seen plenty of people forget, right? Not win.
People forget, because again, obviously, if you're not there, you won't. You're not mired in it. You don't remember this stuff. I had never seen a player accused more of being a cheat than Flusher until coldzera come along. Everyone said these Brazilians were on the gear. Look, for the purposes of yes,
I don't remember that at all.
A few like sort of aim lock clips and where people were saying that's why you're winning.
That one on Mirage, you know, like, listen, Fallen had that one on Cobble. What people don't realize, what launched, if that's a term, you know, Don Hassey as an influencer, he was the guy who claimed to be a hacker who had got proof that the Brazilians were using cheats, because everybody was convinced they were using cheats. Pro play, because coldzera, remember, he didn't have the reputation. Like, when people were accused in Fallen, you're like, this guy played fucking 1.6, he's played Source, he's been all over, he's built a scene. Calling that motherfucker a cheat is insane. Like, he's just having a purple patch. He's picked up the AWP and he's in a really good team, and you know, he's on form. That's all that is. Like, people doing all this thing. Well, if you look on 32 Tick, it does this. Like, grow up, you know.
The irony is they need to bring in the surprise witness. I'll actually be the defense that Form definitely doesn't cheat. I think he's overrated as fuck. So that would be the craziest merge in the minds ever. Last 11th where I come in, save the whole case.
Yeah, exactly.
But
just to finish the point, Jason, you know, coldzera was accused of cheating loads because people didn't really know who he was, and he went from being this like relatively novice player brought in with FNX. FNX had the clout, FNX had the reputation. He'd been there, done that in 1.6. coldzera was the young kid that Fallen was telling everyone is going to be the best player in the world. Turns out he is, and everyone goes, "No, he's got to be on the motherfucking gear. He's got to be cheating." That's what people were saying, and so, you know, for me, and this is where I wanted to go with this, I don't think there is a single player on 2019 Grand Slam Liquid that matches up to 2016 coldzera at all. Not even close for me.
No, probably not. I mean, dude, the craziest thing about Cold Zero, he joined Luminosity in 2015. It took him all the way to 2018 to have his first sub 1.0 rating, and that was 0.99. Like, that's mental. And then that was the only one of 2018. And in 2019, he had 3 events sub, but like, I mean, to go that long without that kind of especially coming in as a rookie, is like, this is another one of those guys that, like, if you ever do an episode on like best rookie performances of Counter-Strike players, Cold Zero is going to be on the list, like right up there with anyone. Might even be able to just win it. His rookie season is just unbelievable to think about someone stepping in to professional Counter-Strike and just delivering right out of the gate. So, yeah, and you know what? I think it's fine for people to call him a baiter, but he was a good baiter. He was fucking great at it. And if he's gonna bait, like, and he's winning all the clutches at the end of the day, that's exactly the position that he was in these tactics, to be alive at the end of the day, to bait a little bit so he can put together a full picture and make the best decision. And he delivered year after year in that role.
The game played a bit differently then as well, right? Like today, maybe BlameF is a good example. Before Astralis, like the BlameF that was calling in Complexity, he would do these nuke rounds, right, where he'd get space to get secret control or warehouse control, and then he would just wait, right? That's when he would lurk. But they would use all the utility to get BlameF in position. And then if he didn't get anything done with that position, the round would fizzle out, and that's why we all thought Complexity was shit. Right, with Coldzera, Fallen didn't call around Coldzera, right? Like that's not how this worked. Like a lot of the time, all the action would happen on the map, and then Coldzera sure would have support, or he'd have Taco, still with him to be able to trade off of him or whatever, help set him up for these situations. But the rounds weren't called around Coldzera. He had to deal with how the cards were dealt, and that's whatever Fur and Fallen were able to get done earlier on, and then he'd have to come through with all that information. And that's the harder way of getting it done. You're not the one who's taken the space. Then the rest of your team makes a reaction, and then you get to capitalize. All the shit goes on while you're sitting doing your thing, holding your dick, and then you go, "Oh, it's my turn now." And then he cut in to be able to convert and be as effective as he was. On top of that, the level of clutch play under pressure, right? That's one of the factors of the greats. Yes. Clutch play under pressure. He has that. And that, when you bring that into the conversation with Liquid, there's just nobody on Liquid has that anywhere near a Coldzera, right? Coldzera has to be up there as one of him. Simple. Who else would you even put in that? Right. Yeah. And now you're talking like the mega, like that. That's what you want to be. That's the company you want to hold. The players who can come up clutch in pressure environments. That's where the greats really make their name.
By the way, that whole thing as well, like that, you perfectly nailed it there. By the way, when they say he baited, they make it sound like he got the kill, then just died and then lost the round. Like he won the round. That's called being clutch. That's called being a closer. Like the joke was, like you're saying, half the time he didn't have like a strat where it's like, oh, I'm just going to go this path. It's like he just came along at the end. That's why I always said he was like the Terminator. The other thing about this player that you can't explain if you're not an old school fan is he was mega intimidating to other pro players. Like he was inside their head. They just knew it was inevitable. That's why I call him the Terminator. He's just going to come around that corner and gradually kill 1 or 2 people, and I'm going to see that obituary feed, and it's me next. Like the joke is, Prime Cold Zero was like the end of fucking Rogue One when Darth Vader just comes in, he's just killing people. Like pull that guy up, chop this guy's head off, kill this guy. Like fucking, he was just doing that, smirking everyone, and everyone's like running away from him.
Dude, one of the best stories about Cold Zero, and I don't remember. I know Fallen told me this in Liquid, but I think it came out publicly. I don't know if a lot of people like caught on to it. Is like Cold Zero doesn't play a lot of like those pro pugs or like FPLs. Even at the height of his career, wasn't involved with those a whole lot. But he played a shit ton of matchmaking with just like friends from back home and just like casual friends. But the story always goes, because Coldzera is such like a process-oriented person who like has his set way of doing things in his routines, he would actually play those matchmaking games like they were like the major finals. Like he would be like chilling in halls, like waiting for his moment to pounce. He's not like running out in matchmaking trying to like style and drop like 35 kills. He was actually playing like typical fundamental Counter-Strike in matchmaking with like his friends from back home.
I'm just trying to
smurfing.
Right down. Coldzera, literally the best player in the world and major MVP, is smurfing in the game. And he's like, in real Counter-Strike, give me a chance. He's just holding the angle the whole time. Just fucking, and literally when you type into the World Tour, like we all used to back in the day, like, bro, it's not the CPL final. He's like, I want one of those. Like, fuck you. Like, this guy's whack. What the fuck?
It's so good. It's so funny.
That's ridiculous. Coldzera, yes. sound.
I mean, I remember talking to Fallen about him as well. Like when he first came through, like apparently, like, you know, when he joined in 2015, and obviously in the build up to becoming the best player in the world, 2016, 2017, Fallen told me out of all the players he'd worked with, he'd never seen a player as like hungry, who like wanted it as much, was doing like demo review, like just deathmatch non-stop, you know, with his eyes closed, like some, you know, savant monk, you know, like just fucking doing everything he had to do to be, you know, this like phenom. And, you know, it all worked. It all like really, his work ethic paid off, you know. And like I say, in 2016, it's real funny. If you go look at the top players at Columbus, obviously he's at the top. He's at the top of the mountain with a 1.32 rating. And it gets weird because Nico is below him, right? Okay. So far, so good. Then it's Edward from Na'Vi. And then it's like Flamey from Na'Vi. Then you get
free or someone come out.
Yeah, then you get Simple Device, okay,
All
normal.
right, okay.
But then you get Shara
I'm out.
from Flipside, who of course is still fighting the Minotaur in the labyrinth when he fell in that. So anyway, look, you know, we
old joke. He just went down to Pan's Labyrinth and he like, where the fuck did he go? His whole life down there.
I haven't even seen him.
You can't come back.
I've always
You
said,
can't come back to that clip.
when you know how brutally fucked up we are with our sense of humor in CS, is the first reaction wasn't, I hope that guy's okay and not seriously injured. It was like, lol, look, and everyone's just replaying that clip on their phones over and over. I was like, this is really fucked up, but hilarious.
I like everything in Counter-Strike. So look, we need to start wrapping it up and kind of talking about this, you know, matchup, because obviously, you know, old man Chad.
I think it's an interesting contrast here, though, Rich, because here's what's interesting about this one for me is it's all going to, I think this one's going to come down to, if I had to guess, what people think of the peak matchup. The reason why it has to be the peak matchup is this, right? Comparably, actually, also the Luminosity team didn't win that much. It's just mainly majors they won. So one team didn't win a major. One team did win only majors almost. The real contrast is this. I think this match would depend on, like, essentially what period they play in. Because I think there's either a world where either Team Liquid would just blow them off the server, or Luminosity would win the close game and win all the clutches. That's how I think it goes if they play. So I want to see where you guys come down. Which one are you going to take?
It is kind of interesting because Jason's point about the Krieg meta is very valid, and that, you know, there was a gun in the game that shouldn't
one
have
team
existed.
gets the Krieg, the other one doesn't get it.
Yeah. So, you know, listen, I'm gonna say this: I fucking despised the Krieg meta. I think that was like one of the worst periods of CSGO history for me. I don't give a fuck all these bitches crying about the silence them for being too busted or whatever. That should have lasted forever. I don't give a fuck what you say. Even if that was true and it was like irreparably broken and complete, blah, 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 all of that stuff, better than the Krieg and Org meta by a million miles. Remember, in fact, that fucking dog shit major in Berlin was made even more dog shit by the Krieg and Org bullshit that was going on. Like, fuck.
Well, look at the ENS team from that era as well.
Remember
pretty much entirely collapsed once the AUG got nerfed.
Yeah, the AUG's been nerfed. Well, see you guys, see you Finland. Yeah, it's been wicked. So look, for me, forget metas. Imagine a pure version of Counter-Strike where everything works as it should be. You know, someone's going to go, oh, you mean 1.6? Shut up, nerd. You know what I mean. Like a good version. And then put these two teams at the peak of their powers going against each other. And I'll just start off on the votes. Luminosity in 2016, it was the first time I was really blown away by an attacking CSGO team. Because like with NIP, yeah, they were amazing, Freiburg, Entry Legend, all of that, but no one else could stand up to them. They were just the best team. They were just by far and away the best team. Then you get some of the French guys like emerge and have their little shine, and they're doing it aggressive. But, you know, again, there's broken pistols in the game at that time. You know, it's a bit weird. 2015 was the first time I got really like, oh, wow, Fnatic systems. You know, like, look at that. Look at the CT side. Look how hard they are to break down. Love that. And then we get into 2016, and here we are with the Brazilians, and it was like a throwback. But for me, they were doing it against teams that had learned better defensive protocols. They were doing it against teams that had come out of this era where you got work done on the CT side. I think, as I remember it in 2016, I don't remember any particularly like busted fucking guns that like ruined the game in any way. You know, I know obviously the economy was a little bit different and stuff, but for me, this was a team that I was absolutely wowed by. I loved to watch them play. I loved to watch coldzera and Fallen and Fur pop off. I had a great renewed appreciation for the support work like Taco was doing. And of course, obviously, you got to see a 1.6 legend come back and actually be good, you know, which wasn't happening a lot even in 2016. For me, hands down, 2016 Luminosity would be this North American purple patch, you know, brief summer fling team of Team Liquid.
This one's really hard.
Yeah, it is.
Like
I think this is the hardest one we've done the whole tournament so far.
Yeah,
It's really tough.
I agree.
I keep myself going between the two positions. I'm not even sure what I'm going to pick.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think the hard part too is like if I'm to take the peak Liquid that we saw for those 2 to 3 months, I think there's no question they beat this Brazilian team at both teams' peaks, because we've seen SK in Luminosity in 2016 that year lose to teams when they're playing some of their best Counter-Strike as well outside of the majors. I think the problem is when you take the whole year of Team Liquid, I don't even know.
Yeah.
I think I'd still have to take. Oh my god, I don't even know. Someone else.
Remember, it's peak. It's peak. So
maybe
would count.
Maybe if I explain like how I reason it.
I mean, if it's peak. If it's peak, it's Liquid. I mean, if we're taking the peak of both teams.
But by peak, the Brazilians still won 2 majors.
As the problem,
I'm not trying to.
Chad, as far as I can tell, here's my issue: is this? If they just play on a random day of the year, just a random, I think Liquid would win. Because like I said,
I agree.
But if this scenario, because it's like a bracket, is like a major. The problem is that's where Liquid didn't get it done. So that's the only angle where I have to go to the. So I have a hard time. I keep going between the two. That's why I'm low key trying to get you two to both vote on one. Then I
I mean, if it's
I'm a cunt like that. Don't worry.
If we're
if
talking,
it's peak, it's Liquid. If it's across the whole year, but like the body of work of these two teams in these 2 years, I think it's SK and Luminosity.
but this is why we're in the tournament right now. So we've just gone into the time periods and we've grabbed everybody and we've somehow fucking leveled them up here, so it's there we're as even as we can be. And if we're in this tournament, the pressure's there, and we're on stage, and one of these dickheads on Liquid tries to knife coldzera, and he fucking stands up on the desk and starts yelling, and all his teammates look up at him, and they get fired up, and then the Brazilians go charging. I'm going with the Brazilians. Like, I have to. Because in that environment, like, I know that they're fucking warriors. They've done it. They've been in series where they're down, they're out, they're meant to lose, and then they fucking pull it together. And then not
so
only
in this hypothetical environment, you put Liquid in front of a Brazilian crowd.
Well, look, I don't know. At this point,
biased towards Brazil. I know it's
at this point, North America's not popular for anything. So I don't know where, like, you know, I don't know, man. I don't know. I want to go with, because then also, I'm gonna go with the Brazilians. I'm gonna go with the Brazilians.
The problem here is, like, low key, I wanted to manipulate them both to say Liquid. Then I would have said Luminosity, but it's a hard choice. Then, on the one hand, Liquid would go forwards, but I couldn't even claim I was the only one that even bloody fought for Luminosity. It would just be the most perfect narrative. The problem I have is this: it's the ultimate like heart versus head one. Because, like I say, my head tells me Team Liquid wins the game, but my heart tells me Liquid Luminosity wins it. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, because like, look, I'm even just imagining the scenario like where that jump in AWP shot happens, but it's this 2019 team happening in Alicia's face, and brilliant, love it.
What would you say, Richard? It's like, obviously potentially got Sam as well. What would you say if we have to categorize like the circumstance? Is it like this is a major essentially? Is it like the Super World Championship?
Yeah, I guess it is. It is a LAN tournament. It is a LAN tournament environment, and
$5 million prize pool.
Yeah, the ultimate prize. But basically, look, I've even wrote it down on the paper. Hang on, okay, let me just.
Inflation's kicked in.
Are we getting a parlor a day, or what's going on?
Yeah, I'll stop
Two
the rest
parlors
of
at
them.
this point, I think.
See, there's the winner. There's the trophy. Right.
Okay.
But
Okay.
the runners-up go to Carcosa.
There you go.
So there's a lot on the line. Is all I'm saying. So think carefully, guys. Your votes matter. But no, for me, I mean, I conceived it as a LAN tournament, like an actual LAN tournament environment, and I think that's another W for the Brazilians because they get shit done in those environments while Liquid perennial chokers, right?
Isn't there an argument to be made that if we're creating all these conditions of there being a Brazilian crowd on a big major stage on a big LAN tournament, that's the way that we're painting the picture for Luminosity to win? Isn't that an indictment in and of itself that we're having to create all these external
The
factors?
Brazilian crowd, Jason. We just want the
McConnell
people.
here in like doing his courtroom speech, and I put it to you that this is an indictment, sir. An indictment of the whole system, sir.
We're creating this massive fucking. We're retconning this whole universe into like this world where Liquid is placed at every disadvantage possible.
This is right. The crowd is every interdimensional being that just has an interest in Counter-Strike assembling in a quantum super state.
No, I know what he means though.
Yeah.
He just means because Chad did like this whole thing. He just like created a fantasy scenario where Cold Zero like stood up. So this scenario, it's like, and then all of a sudden, you know, Fallen looks
about his career.
Fallen looks at the crowd, sees his family, remembers where he came from. That gives him the spirit to win. Like, you know, like we are just setting up the movie at this point, Chad. So the question is, are you taking Luminosity at the end of this?
Who did Jason, just quickly answer this question? Who did Cold Zero do the jumping AWP against?
2016 Team Liquid, 3 years prior.
And what event was that at?
That was at MLG Columbus, the major.
So what was the crowd?
It was American.
Okay, so problem solved here.
There was like 15 Brazilians in front of them, though. There was like a little patch.
Look, you're talking about the crowd. Cold Zero is going to be talking shit. Doesn't matter who the crowd is. He's doing those plays. Does not give a fuck.
I'm just saying. I don't really care either way. I'm just saying throughout all the other episodes, we've never manufactured a crowd to come up at this stage of the tournament. But I mean, I think it's fair, and I think it just shows more that this is actually a pretty close, difficult decision. But you know, if we are gonna, I mean, I agree with you. If we do put this on a stage in front of a crowd in a high pressure situation, Luminosity withstands pressure.
Just die for me, dude. Just die for me. That's what's going to be happening.
Like I say, part of me really wants Team Liquid to win this, but on the other hand, I almost feel like it's actually fairer that they get the distinction that they would win any other day except this one. Like that's a pretty unique ridge. Like in theory, you would have gone forwards, but the problem is this. It's like I say, what I keep coming back to on this is, it's one thing if you just talk about why you like a play, you can make arguments all day. We are talking about the greatest to ever play. This is like the best teams ever. So it's got to be like you have to do the hard decisions. I'll just say Luminosity wins because, like I say, if it is the Super World Championship, we're assuming the biggest pressure. I would take like Prime Cold Zero to win out in that situation. You know,
sure.
And I like Starbucks, so fuck Stewie.
Okay.
Why don't we just end it there?
I don't really like Starbucks.
Your vote on the record. I want your vote on the record, Jason. I want your vote.
I said if you're telling me the criteria is both of these teams playing at their absolute peak that we saw within these years, I'm taking Liquid.
So it is a 3-1. There you go. The bald eagle.
He had to do it, and it's
fair
enough.
You know how it goes. EG motherfuckers.
I agree, though. It's the closest one we've done. That's a hard one, I think.
So that was a hard one. All right, so that means Luminosity go through, and they're going to be taking on the powerhouse Astralis 2018 in the semi-finals. So, I know, yeah, I kind of feel that one.
Wait, say it again. What's the semifinal?
Astralis 2018. They play Luminosity 2016.
Well,
so.
It's been a good run.
Yeah,
it was a quick, Yeah,
that one we'll be able to bang that episode out in 20 minutes. Not a big spoiler. Or maybe not. Let's see. Anyway, that was. I'm trying to generate.
Way to keep the suspense. Yeah.
I don't think anyone watches this shit anyway, mate. I've got to sell it. So yes, that was Time Travel Lad. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you on the next episode when we get to the semi-final stage of the tournament. Until then, take care. Bye bye.